Hello, it is so great to be here and to see all of you here. My name is Sujin Lee. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Chief. Today is, I think, officially my 1 month anniversary, and thank you so much. It has been intense and incredible, and showing up and being a part of events like this is one of the main reasons why I was so excited to join Chief and become part of the team. So thank you all for making time out of your very busy schedules to join us for this event in celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. For me personally, I love all of our events, but my parents are from South Korea and immigrated to the States many decades ago. I was born in the Bronx and grew up in New York City, and so feel especially excited today. And I'm going to hand it over to Lisa and Willow Reed, who helped with these beautiful women to put together a really interesting, diverse panel for all of you here tonight. And it is just a testament to the power of our community and our members that, it's you all who help bring the magic. And so kudos to each of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to share insights and share your experiences with the rest of us. And I also want to give a shout out to all of our members, especially in Chicago, LA, and SF, who also brought to life amazing events this month in celebration of AAPI Heritage Month. So Lisa, take it away. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Sujin. So, hi, I'm Lisa Taylor Reed. Mabuhay, I know. I'm Lisa Taylor Reed. I am head of brand at Ignite. If you've been around the New York Clubhouse, I feel like I live here at least 2 to 3 times, during the week. I'm here working and saying hey to y'all. I've been a chief member since October of 2019, so kind of an OG from the Tribeca days. So shout out to the Tribeca Clubhouse. So I think happy API Heritage Month. This is an epic night. As Sujin mentioned, this is not just happening in the New York Clubhouse tonight, this is happening in Chicago, San Fran, LA, and with a lot of heart, a lot of sleepless nights. The event that you're going to participate in is member-led. So that's enough for me. I think it's really important that you meet the women on this powerhouse panel because it's through their stories we're going to learn a lot and hopefully come away with something new and insightful for this API Heritage Month. So why don't we just go down the line?
Hi everyone. Lisa, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I feel really honored to be amongst all my friends here out here. I was thinking about what to share with you, and maybe in the context of what we're talking about today, there are 3 things about myself. One is I am a refugee. My mother and I left Vietnam in 1875 when I was 8. And I'm sitting here because of the generosity and kindness of many people. Secondly, I'm a mother. I have a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old daughters. I have to say it's the most joyful experience of my life being a mother, and it has been the most daunting experience of my life. But I think I've learned to be more patient and humble, and I think those attributes, like all mothers, really help us to be better leaders. And then lastly, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I spent 21 years at IBM, and I know you don't think of entrepreneurship when you think of IBM, but I really believe it's one of the most innovative companies in the world, and I had a lot of fun because most of my time was in IBM Research, which is the innovation arm where I got to be an entrepreneur and create many businesses. And I left 2 years ago to start my own businesses, Flourish and Liminal, and I also on the side have a coaching and consulting practice.
Sorry, we didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jade Wynn Stratner.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks for the reminder to start with our name. Hi, I'm Zee Chun, and I'm the founder of Rise Art, which is an art gallery based here in New York. I'm Chinese American. My mother's from Singapore and my father is from Hong Kong. I'm ABC, so I was born here. And I was a founding member of Chief in New York, Tribeca. And when I went in for my interview before Chief opened, I noticed that they were graphic design but did not have any art on the walls. So I asked who their art consultant was, and they said we don't have one. So we collaborated on the Tribeca Clubhouse, and since then we have curated the artwork at all of the Chief Clubhouse locations. So if you visit London or San Francisco, LA, Chicago, soon DC, you will see works by women identifying artists that are on our roster. And what I loved about, especially since we're sitting on this backdrop, what I loved about collaborating with Chief was that they did make art a priority, and they really paid attention to what the story that art was telling. And they wanted bold pieces that would stand out, that wouldn't necessarily fade into the background and be decor. And I think every piece does have a statement, might be slightly more subtle, but they're powerful stories. And I think that in a space like this, it's amazing to see women sharing their own stories amongst this backdrop of the stories of the artists that we brought in. So very quickly, Uprise Art is a gallery that works with people for art for their homes, and also works with companies for art for spaces will work or gather, hospitality, healthcare, art for the office, etc. Pass it along.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Janelle Shah. I'm currently CMO and GM at a fintech startup called Zip. We are a buy now, pay later. I know there's a lot of news about buy now, pay laters, but let me tell you why I joined them. The audience that we serve is the underserved and the underbanked. And while there is the press and the lobby saying one story, what I see every day is the millions of customers who are able to live lives with integrity and dignity because of services like ours. So I've always been fascinated by and attracted to opportunities that challenge the status quo. And I think that's probably because that's the root of my story as well. I was born and raised in Mumbai in India. And at that point, my options after graduating high school were engineering, medicine, or business, and I wanted neither. I see a lot of recognition. Thank you, I know you see me. And I published a book while I was 15 years old. I was one of the youngest published authors in India. That became my ticket to a fully funded scholarship to undergraduate school here, and I studied journalism, and sort of challenging the status quo always became my thing. I've been very fortunate to work with entrepreneurs. I am not one myself, but I'm very good at making them successful. Currently, Zip is my third founder-led company that I work with, and yeah, I'm a very proud immigrant. Also a newish mom. I have a 16-month-old daughter, and I'm very fortunate to be part of Chief. I see some of my Indian Chief ladies right there, and we are part of a WhatsApp community. And I was telling them recently that becoming a new mom has opened me up to all these different aspects of my identity that I never had to explore before, because I am still very much Indian, born and bred. I have an accent. My daughter won't. My daughter will be American. She is American. And things that didn't matter to me before, like representation and just things that I know that the larger community cared about, and I cheered from the sidelines. But after her birth, I'm very much no longer in the sidelines, very much trying actively to have that impact. So that's me and my story.
Hi everyone, I'm Mon. I am the founder and CEO of a consumer brand called Sang. I think you guys saw it in the menu.
So delicious.
Yeah, we were on the menu for the month, and it's a Vietnamese coffee brand. We had 5 SKUs. I started it 2 years ago during COVID. Prior to it, I worked in brand partnerships in the airline space, and you can imagine during COVID, there were no partnerships, no flights. So I had this idea during COVID with everything happening with our community, with Stop Asian Hate specifically, you know, it just made me sad. A lot of the women in New York City were being targeted. And it was really a profound moment because I felt like the community was coming together and it was a time of celebration versus I'm an immigrant, I'm a refugee, spent like a year in a refugee camp in Indonesia. English is not my first language. And to see where we are today in 2023 or 2020 when I started this, I saw so much movement in consumer brands being funded and so much celebration, and so I wanted to do something with Vietnamese in particular, where I grew up and where I was born, and I had the idea of Vietnamese coffee because it was either that or pho, and that's really hard to make because that's what Vietnam is known for. And so fast forward today, we will be launching in Target stores in August. Nationwide. And you know, I'm here to talk about my experience as an Asian female founder because the last year was wonderful for us, for our company, because we raised millions of dollars. But as you know, when you're a female founder and you know a minority founder, I'm sure the numbers are even lower at 1.7% in all venture-backed female funding last year. And so the millions of dollars that I raised definitely put me in the top, 5 to 10%. And I just want to shine a light on that and help anybody when they have an idea, whether it's consumer or anything along the way, because you know representation matters, and with consumer and with venture or whatever it is. So that's about me.
Hi, my name is May Yamada Lifton. I go by May. I'm born in New York. I'm Japanese American. My parents came here as an expat when there was no direct flight to the U.S. So they were pioneers. My career has been bridging between the U.S. and Asia quite a bit in healthcare. So I spent a good 13 years at Pfizer, helping Pfizer create drugs for Japan and China. Got here from New York. Believe it or not, I did go to an engineering school, but did not major in engineering. That helped me a lot because they always made me do the numbers. So I did a lot of M&A, BD, different things where I need to help also expand the portfolio globally for Pfizer. I more recently started doing, again, I'm good at numbers and everybody else's head, so I got headhunted to sell software for statistics and AI, and I was doing that kind of work for a couple of years. But I got headhunted to take over the family business. It's called Maypro. My father started it 45 years ago. It's 100 million, 100 people, Japan, US, China. We have a holding company, so one of our subsidiaries, Quality of Life Labs, is here. Casey, thank you for coming to man our night table. And a lot of the ingredients in Asia, which we had in our food, have a lot of health benefits, right? So like shiitake and lychee and all these Indian Ayurvedic herbs, you know? So these are things that US Americans were like, wow. And my dad was known for introducing all these ingredients to America. And so we have kind of like an area bringing health from nature around the world. And now we make our own products. One of the key SKUs, HCC, has been like a COVID bestseller because, you know, a lot of people who couldn't, like, didn't want, there was no treatment, right? I supported Pfizer bizarrely, but there was no treatment. Like, I actually set up their statistics platform, but there's nothing. So people took our supplements for immune. And we've had great data historically, so kept taking it. Keep getting great data, like it's good for clearing HPV, if it's chronic and can't clear it, it's good for Lyme disease. So it comes from shiitake extracts, you know, fermented, it's actually activating your natural immune system, which has been just shot. over time. So anyway, that's my name, May. I'm born in New York. I have 2 children. I'm now trying to scale my family business, and really excited to be a part of Chief. I joined it so I could have a community, so now I don't have the big, large company walls to help me, so now I have a community here, so thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna dive into it. So we got a little bit of people's stories, but I mean, when we think about leadership journey, right? You know, we can call it leadership journey. I choose to think of it as every superhero has an origin story, right? There is something formative, you know, maybe it's an event that shaped them, you know, to make decisions. It may not be a career one, but you know, said very definitively, you know, I know that I want to do this and never this ever, right? And so, well, I guess before we get into the origin stories, I'd be curious to know from the folks here on the panel, how many of you grew up knowing that you wanted to be a CEO? No one. How many of you grew up knowing that you wanted to start and found your own business? No one. You did? Okay, so they family pressure. Okay. How many of you knew from a young age that you wanted to lead? Right, okay. Yes, show of hands in the room here. Curious, you know, did any of you guys, because this is a very interesting, you know, cohort of women that we have here. Show of hands in the room. How many of you grew up knowing that you wanted to lead a business or start a business? Did any of you guys grow up knowing you wanted to be founders? How many of you grew up wanting to be CEOs? And knowing that you just wanted to, like, okay. How many of you guys grew up, or I'm sorry. How many of you women grew up knowing that you wanted to lead and were born to lead? Okay. See, so it's never about the name, really. It's about the, you know, intrinsically something inside you know that you want to go do this. So who would like to be the first to share their origin story? And keep in mind, I know all of your stories because we did the one-to-one, so I will start calling names. Let's go.
So as I shared earlier, my mom and I immigrated to Vietnam, and we literally left with nothing. So when we got here, we were really, really poor. You know, for the first 15 years of my life, it was all about getting food on the table, having a roof over our top. And my mom and I were just talking about last weekend how the only way she knew what times we leave for work, because we didn't have a clock, was the train going by our house. So growing up in that context, I never felt like I had the luxury to think about what I wanted to be, much less lead anything. And I was also very shy. So when I got to high school, I don't know what happened, but I had this gumption to run for class president, and I won. I had a campaign called Win with Win. And that was the start of my leadership journey. And since then, every role I've had in every job has been leading in one way or another.
That's fantastic.
So I had always had leadership roles in high school and college. In high school, I actually had to petition to hold all the roles because they said you have too many, and I wouldn't be able to finish high school. When I attended Columbia, the 2 organizations that I was most involved in was the student-led dance concert, which happened twice a year. I produced that show for a few years, and it was hundreds of dancers, and it really brought out this kind of left brain, right brain combination that has driven me throughout my entire career. I love rallying different personalities and strengths around a common goal, but then also bringing the creative together with the operational. While I was in undergrad, I also managed the Columbia Bartending Agency and School of Mixology, which up till that time had always been co-managed by 2 male students and usually 2 grad students. The 2 men who ran it before me were kind of coasting and just wanted to do it for the props that you get in college for having that title. And they said, do you want to apply? Why don't you run it? You're the most organized in this office. So starting my sophomore year, suddenly I was thrown into what we used to call accelerated business school. It was a student enterprise. which meant that Columbia would cover any losses, but if you turned a profit, they would keep 35%. And I had arrived at Columbia with $500 in my bank account, and I was very motivated. So I single-handedly ran it for my sophomore year until I graduated. I left college with $60K in the bank. And this was back in 2006, so it was just so exciting to really take something and make it my own. So I have, for the rest of my career, I started a dance company for several years, and then I started Uprise Art 11 years ago. And it's always been a combination of bringing together creativity and commerce. So I went from nonprofit performing arts to for-profit visual arts. And I love making art, I love making money. And I think that what joins both those things is that you can really create all of those from very little, which I think many people can relate to given their cultural backgrounds and family history here in this country.
I think I go back to the origin story. I think it's more around my unlock happened in my teenage years around, oh, if I want to do something, if I apply myself, I can do it. So this is, I went to a convent school, only girls, and every year, we had a publisher who would come in and do a book exhibition. And after that, I remember they posted a little thing on the notice board saying, if you're a writer, if you have stories, come submit them. And no one in the school, any of the years, had ever actually taken them at face value. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, I have some stories. I could, send them my stories. And then for 4 years, every couple of months, my dad would take me to the publishers. I submit my stories. The nuns would very charmingly reject them and say they were not good enough. But I think when you're a child, you're just so resilient. And it's like, okay, well, I'll come back in a couple of months. And I think it was this constant sort of, I'll just keep doing it. And then suddenly I had a contract and I was signing a royalty, fees. And I was like, wow, I've published something. And I think just that unlock and seeing that if I wanted something, it didn't matter how long it took. It was just like you stay in the game long enough, like you eventually win. I think that to me was, I think that really helped me dream much bigger. I don't ever question if I want something, I don't ever question whether I can get it or not, or whether I can achieve it. I think it's just about the how. So I think maybe that's like when I think about leadership or ambition, maybe that's leadership. I think that's sort of my origin story for that.
Thank you.
I guess for me, the origin story, I just would like to tell people that it's never too late. I started my company at 42. I was the youngest of 8 children, and 4 of them are doctors and 3 of them are engineers, and my mom had no idea what brand partnerships were. And for being that child growing up, and there's a huge gap between myself and my youngest brother, so the youngest boy, so there's 10 years. And so for me, I was just always babied and coddled, and I was never pushed to lead, pushed to be a CEO or anything like that. And then I married my ex-husband, who was a successful guy on Wall Street, and stayed at home for a few years and didn't do anything, and I didn't find fulfillment there, and started out as an assistant after staying home with my kids for a few years, and worked my way up and VP level and whatnot. And the last job, was kind of, trapped in that golden handcuff, because I had finally made it. I got 1% of these large multi-million-dollar airline partnership deals, and then so you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, this is it. You made it, and it's never too late to leave, because I was surrounded by all these founders as a part, being in partnerships, surrounded by all these skincare and health, athleisure founders, and I finally had the confidence in myself to say, I can create something, I can have an idea like these people did. So I'll never be Forbes 40 under or whatever. maybe they'll have something fabulous under 50, I don't know. But, you know, raising money when you're older, like 42, and having kids and all of that, I just want to say, I never knew that I had that in me, but, you know, just to have that awakening and just to have that confidence in yourself when you do see it in yourself.
I wanted to follow because I'm 50, okay? And my marketing woman said, you should apply to Fabulous over 50. Because of these recent movies where they're like, don't ever tell you like you're too old after 50. I think for me, actually, I think origin stories, more inspirations. My grand aunt ran retail clothing chain in Shikoku, Japan. She was an entrepreneur. My parents, my mother's mother and my father's mother, they came back after World War II and they kind of had to raise their children doing like a boarding house, you know, because Japan's very poor. So, and my father's father passed away after World War II. They had to leave. Japan was doing, you know, business in Asia, and they had to leave. And on the way home, he passed away. So she had to run her own like boarding house to raise 4 kids. So I had very strong ladies in my Japanese heritage, which is not what you normally hear. You know, Japan is not known for strong women, but they are actually really powerful. So I think the strong ladies are a big inspiration. I do think that given as immigrants, we're more risk, I was more risk averse, you know, because I had nothing. I had no clothing, no nothing, like, you know, the business was nothing in the beginning. I wanted the security. I really wanted the security of a large company. I wanted the social currency of not being that little weird business. I actually wanted bigger things, right? So I wanted to do biotech and like AI and cool big stuff they write about in the papers, and I wasn't going to do it in my little family business. So I do think you do have to be honest with yourself what you want to do, and the large corporates like Pfizer, you know, really gave me that opportunity to do something bigger than I would have ever gotten to see. But I'll tell you this, I remember the guy who started Cup of Noodles, he's like 48, okay? So I was like, he started Cup of Noodles at 48, I was like, and I'm Asian, and I'm looking pretty good at 50. I got a long time to go. You know, I basically decided it's time to get the energy, courage. People like Tory Burch, they started like later, you know, and we think entrepreneurs have to be 30 under 30. Actually, we demographic actually buy less stuff. We actually bend closer to the customer's needs. We also know how to run a lot of things at the same time. You know, we're very capable. It's just we're not brave enough, right? So I think I had people tell me, what are you gonna lose? What do you have to lose at this point, right? Like, don't, woman, like, why are you not more confident in yourself? And I was like, all right, I'm not 30 under 30, I was not that polished at that age, but I think I can do it now. So just, for me, just, you know, older ladies who were bold, those were my aspirations, and also people like yourselves, you know, coaching and mentoring and saying, girl, go, go, go. That's the most important thing, so, right?
Okay. So, you know, from leadership and origin stories, right, you know, so when you think about, you know, the road to the top, right, whichever road you've chosen, be it starting your company, right, as a solo founder, to, you know, trying to make your way up the corporate ladder, right, it is a lonely road, right, and it's especially lonely for Asian executives who do not see people who are like them, you know, perhaps at the top, right? It's funny when I think about my own personal journey. My parents, you know, came from the Philippines. They were in the medical community. They were absolutely not helpful at all when I had problems in the workplace. So if I needed help negotiating a raise, didn't ask them. If I had a problem with my boss, yeah, probably not helpful. And so, you know, it came down to, you know, finding those mentors and confidants at work, right?
And so we're gonna break this up a little bit, because again, we've had the benefit of going through these questions already. So, Janelle, when we spoke, you spoke about, mentors or sponsors along the way. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the folks on your journey that, helped you through, great mentorship or sponsorship?
Yeah, I want to talk about my privilege as well for a second. And I've had actually, I've been able to distill what my privilege is more recently. And my privilege is as simple as the fact that I grew up in India seeing women who look like me, sound like me everywhere. They were on television, they were in movies, they were heads of state. They were, not that many, but enough for a young girl to be like, oh, I could do that too. So I think for me, going back to my earlier thing, for me the question was always the how. And I was very fortunate when I moved here. And I think this is maybe partly my personality as well. In seeking for belonging, you try and seek out, people who you think like you and who you think will accept you. And this is at the advent of blogging in 2005, 2006. And there were incredible immigrant bloggers, but also people of color who were blogging online at that point. And that's how actually I started building relationships with people who I felt would be more welcoming of me and my weaknesses and all of that. And funnily enough, that has been a theme through my life, where majority of my sponsors and mentors have actually either been children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, or have just had an extremely global purview point of view where the weaknesses that I was conditioned to believe were mine, which is why I didn't have cultural literacy growing up here, I didn't know about sports, I didn't know about TV shows that people grew up with here, or my accent, which I've had many white men try to correct my accent. None of these mattered to them, and they really gave me the courage to see that my difference was what made me different. But I think coming back to I think what I said to you on the phone is, I am able to figure things out with a little bit of help. What I wanted, I think I can articulate that now. I've never really wanted more mentors. I've always wanted champions and sponsors. Lisa, you met me 3 weeks ago, something like that, and you were like, you need to be on this panel. It's this what I think all of us need. Women, men, our champions, taking our names in rooms when we're not there and thinking of us for opportunities where it's just about putting us front and center. So I'm happy to mentor anyone, but I'd rather be a champion and sponsor.
So, I guess along the same track. So, Lam, I remember when we spoke, it wasn't so much mentors, but you have almost your own, let's say, personal board of advisors. Could you speak to that a little bit?
So we know that venture and financing, it's a male-dominated world. And I have the benefit of my ex-husband being in Wall Street on finance and my boyfriend being a VC himself. And so I sought their advice when working on the deck and really helping me work through that. And so this community is great, Chief is great, but sometimes you can look to your own, close to home, to who can help you too. And those two guys were instrumental in helping me fundraise, instrumental in helping me refine the message to the investors and anyone that I was presenting to. And so I would have loved a female investor out there to help me. I didn't have access to that. I had them, and they were incredible. So I would just say, sometimes help is closer to home than you think it is.
So, we've got quite a bit of money. We're just going to move to the next topic, because I think, this is where we're going to get a little bit weighty, right? And so, Len brought up, that only 1.7% of VC funding goes to female founders, right? And that number obviously dilutes when you think about women of color, when you think about Asian women, right? Also in the same vein, there's that lovely stat that only 1.8% of C-suite roles are held by Asian women, and when you look at Asian CEOs, that drops below 1%, right? It's interesting, right? And I say that because at this moment in time, you could argue that Asians and Asian women have never been more visible, right? Because that's what pop culture tells us,
right? You look at the breakthrough success of Everything Everywhere All at Once. You look at the programs that they have on Netflix. You've got Indian matchmaking next to Bling Empire, next to like, there's like so many different options, right? So like Asians are freaking everywhere. Oh, and then I can't forget all the Filipinos that win all the Grammys, right? So why is there this disconnect, right, from what we see on TV, right, and what we see, you know, in the boardrooms, you know, in our workplaces? And so I'd like to just spend some time digging into like, why do we think that is? And so, who wants to pick that one up?
So I have a little bit of insight from this because I talk to my brother quite often. My name is Si Chun, and because of the way Chinese names work, my brother's name is also Zi Chun. So when you Google us, he's definitely more famous than I am. But he works in film and television. He's out in LA. Shameless plug, his show Gremlins premiered yesterday on HBO Max. It's the Gremlins prequel. It's an Asian American cast. James Hong, Dee Dee Wong. It's really an amazing animated show. Anyway, so he's working in media, and I was talking to him about being on this panel, and he said it's still very surface, and historically, Hollywood has always said it's a talent development issue. So there are a lot of Asians who entered entertainment about 10 years ago and finally are in the position to be hiring and casting and making some of those creative decisions. But that when you go a little bit below the surface, it's still pretty gendered. There are very few Asian women showrunners. Even if there are more Asian showrunners now, women are still a very small minority. And he brought up this point that he was up for a project, and given the subject of the project, he said, I really think you should hire a Japanese woman showrunner for this. And the studio wouldn't go for it. And there was someone who's up in the running who was a Japanese woman, and they said she needs a co-showrunner. And he looked at her resume, and she was definitely qualified. So she dropped out of the project. She felt like it was disrespectful. And he said that it's obviously the double whammy of having to work against the cultural expectations or gender biases in Hollywood. I think that actually is still happening, even though on the surface we're winning all the big awards. It's the same thing that's going on in the boardroom, like you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
Can I just talk about having the co-showrunner there? So that stat of women getting funding at 1.7%, it jumps up to close to 30% when you have a male co-founder. They feel so much better when there's another male in the room. And so I just find that incredibly offensive. And so for me, when you talk about how do you fix the problem, like I can pitch to an analyst and she's a female and she might get the idea and she resonates with me or whatever. She goes up to the partner doesn't understand it. So to really like change the issue and the systemic problem is to have more female LPs, more minority LPs, and then that means obviously the huge institutions that are investing in all these VC funds invest in female and minority-owned funds that are really focused, and that's their focus, to focus on female and minority-owned consumer brands or companies or whatever it is. So that's my take on that.
So, that kind of syncs with something that, Dave, we discussed yesterday, right? And it also has to do with kind of having a seat at the table when it comes to running P&L, right? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so one of the things I realized at the end of the day, the higher you go up, the more insecure you are, and you want someone who's going to help you with whatever the power in the company is, right? So if the growth in the country is slow, you're going to want to grow somewhere else. And that, for me, I was lucky. It was Japan, it was China, and then other actually emerging markets. So the fact that I got to work in growing markets helped me get closer to helping the regional presidents. And then the next thing I was told was you need to basically help with the P&L growth. And so the only way I could get that experience, because in the US there's just so many more people for that job, that rose up through sales, rose up through whatever function, is to go to Japan. And I worked on turnaround for basically headhunted because they could never launch a drug well in Japan for the last 11 years. So I was like, well, I guess if nobody can do it, you can call me. I'm happy to help you. And it was really great. There was a team, a whole bunch of Asian executives and myself, and we worked on a turnaround. I think once you have the P&L responsibility, it's an incredible thing because you also see, I always say, you can't lead unless you see how, in pharma, it's like a big elephant, how the big elephant works. Like if you know one leg, you can't move the elephant. Like if you see how the different legs work together, then you can sit on the top. You know what I'm saying? This guy go that way. But until then, you're kind of an expert in one thing. And so I was more a functional expert, like business development, new product, strategy, but like they're like, what is that? You know, there's only 3 really jobs. You say advisor, or my mentors told me, you sell one, you make one, or you invent one, and everything else is in between, right? So try to get close as you can to some of those experiences because that helps you go up. And so again, long story, try to get as close as you can to those 3. And then try, even if it's tiny little, when they tell you go to Cincinnati and run the local blah, 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 you're like, wow, they just gave me a chance, right? So you kind of have to do these things so that you can see how the whole elephant works, or little mouse, or whatever animal you want to call it. So, and that helps. And then you can go back to your functional expertise and become a head of blah, 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 because you understand the business, right? So that's what I would suggest.
Jade, some thoughts from you on this disconnect?
So first of all, coming back to the earlier conversation, I'm 55 and I'm finding my own company right now. So I think I'm the oldest person. I have been at IBM, as I mentioned, for 21 years, and I was head of innovation, chief experience officer, and 2 years ago, I just decided it was time to leave. And it was really, really scary because I had no idea what I was going to do next. But actually, statistically, there's research that shows that companies who have been founded by people who are 40-year-old or above and have been in a big corporate company do much, much better than the average startup. So anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. But on this conversation about what we can do to change things, I definitely believe that there are things that we should be doing at the policy program level externally. But I also believe that there are lots of things that have to happen internally first. And in my work as coach to founders of startups as well as executive women, what we often work on is getting clarity on what you want and your values and what kind of impact you want to make in the world. I have found in my own personal career that once I got really clear on those things, people were very much available to help me. And so I think one of the solutions is to start internally. The other quick thing I'll just say is I founded a company called Flourish when I left IBM, and we studied leadership through the years and where leadership was going. And with all that we've been through in the last few years, all the turbulence, it has really changed, what we value as a society. And I think along with that is what types of leaders do we value. It's no longer, the kind of leader that, that I'll just say, I don't know if this is PC, but, white men get chosen for their aggressiveness, their, very vocal communication style, and their assertiveness, right? And there are certainly times when those traits are important as a leader. But I think where it's going is it's going to be humility instead of hubris. It's going to be collective intelligence instead of individual intelligence. It's going to be transparency instead of secrecy. And I think all of these qualities are intrinsic to Asian culture. And it's more just about us showing up authentically as ourselves and driving that kind of leadership in companies. So I think that's the other thing that we could do.
And since we're on this track, because I mean, we're gonna dive into the model order, but I feel like we're past this a bit, right? I mean, like for those of you that are familiar with the perception of, you know, Asians being hardworking, smart, it's all great when you're starting out in your careers, but as you try and, you know, rise, you know, it's one thing to have a reputation as a hard worker, it's another thing to gain a reputation as somebody you have confidence in leading. But I mean, the leadership is very clear in this group, so I'm not gonna waste y'all's time with that. But I think I would love to keep on this track because, again, I was so bothered by that 1.8% figure, right? Because very clearly something must be done if we're gonna take it from 1.8% of C-suite leaders being Asian women to 5% to 10%. So we've heard some thoughts, but very constructively, what is it gonna take? You know, what do we need to do to change? Because there are things that we do need to do as a community to kind of take ownership and reverse this trend, right? But what would you like to see? Like, okay, let's start with what would we like to change, right? And then let's think about what would we like to see, you know, to get us from 1.8% of Asians in the C-suite to 5 to 10. You want to tackle? All right.
I actually want to build on something you said as well. I do think in the workplace, Asian women still battle stereotypes around aggressiveness is what you questioned, or we still are in a world where masculine leadership traits, whether they're men or women, are considered to be more effective. And I think that one of the things that needs to change is us taking our own agency. And you know, what I mean by that is, I do think that there is strength in how we show up as Asians. Like you said, like some things are intrinsically part of our culture, of who we are. And things like Asian cultures tend to be more collectivistic. It's more R versus I, right? I think there are certain strengths that we have. And, you know, I go back to sort of, I've received that feedback quite a few times in my career. Oh, Janelle, like you need to be more aggressive, or can you have tough conversations? And I'm like, why do they keep saying that? I was like, do they know I grew up in a joint family with 21st cousins, 42nd cousins, and every day was a negotiation? But it's true, I grew up in a 500 square feet space, and then I was born, there were 13 people living in there. And I think that, you know, what it taught me, like you can call it submissiveness, you can call it being docile, but I think it just taught me how to be really smart and charm my way into getting what I want. So I had to actually flip the conversation. The third time that I received that feedback, it was also a white man who once said I lacked gravitas, because his version of gravitas, I don't know what that was. I started flipping the conversation. I remember the last time I received that feedback, I said to my boss, I said, I'm gonna have to pause you there. Said, how does it matter how I achieve the outcome when I'm achieving exactly the outcome you want me to achieve? And that actually put him at pause, because it's like, well, yeah, she's right. Like, how should it matter to them if I'm having exactly the same desired outcome? So I do think there is some agency that we have to take back. If we are hearing things about ourselves, or if we feel like comments are made about ourselves or our leadership in conversations, it's like, no, like turn that into our strength, because it really is our strength. And I think the other thing that probably needs to change is, I think it's something you said about clarity. We have to want it. I think that women have to want senior roles. Asian women have to want to be CEO, because it really does start from there. And you're right, actually. I think once there is clarity, I have found incredible support and help from all kinds of people. And being close to revenue always helps, but I think even it's that, what I call like the unknown pieces of knowledge, for a variety of reasons. I didn't go to business school. I started my career on the creative path, so there was just a lot of knowledge I was lacking. Just things that, you know, a first year investment banking, you know, student would know that I just didn't know. And I think that it's really important that if this is a journey that we want to be on, we have to make it a business to figure out what are the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns pieces of knowledge that we need. And that's why I think communities like Chief and networking and reaching out to people and being shameless about, hey, I need help, can you help me? I think those really matter.
Thank you. Someone else?
I would say also the sexualization and the fetishization of like Asian women really diminishes our achievements. So it doesn't matter how much money I raised, it's a lot of them, men will say, well, you're just a pretty face, or your ex-husband helped you, or your boyfriend helped you. And so it's changing that in the media too, and it has been happening, at least like you see more strong female Asian leads versus like MASH when I was growing up and whatever, and they're all like docile Asian women and here to serve men. And so I think that is a big thing. The minority, yes, but like when you're an Asian woman too, you deal with that sexualization of what we deal with every single day as an Asian woman. And so to change that narrative in the media, yeah, can we talk about like LPs and the banks, but like the media can help too, because we're not just our looks, we're very strong and very driven, and you know, I just would like that narrative to change.
Sure. I think that, just going back to that idea of some of the model memory downfalls and not just being hardworking, but then also the idea of being submissive and how that becomes problematic. I think that we also have to vocalize that we do aspire for more. I think that part of being hardworking and good at your job is that if you are good at your job, people want to keep you in that role, and to assume that that's all you aspire to do. And you, someone who is white and also hardworking, the default is to assume that they aspire to be a leader and to continue to move up. So you have to vocalize. I mean, my grandparents moved to Atlanta, Georgia in the 60s and opened a Chinese laundromat. It's not because they dreamed of opening a Chinese laundromat, that's one of the only jobs that they could do, right? So you have to show that it's not necessarily just what you're needed to do, but what you want to do. I think that culturally also sometimes it's hard to vocalize that. And bring it way back, we're talking about your parents maybe not being able to tell you about how to maneuver within the boardroom. I do think that there's a lot of risk-taking involved in aspiring and asking for more. And I will say that if you grew up with very little, like my mom, I think, took a lot of chances and risks, because she was like, you don't really have much to lose. And that's something that she's really imparted on me, is that, you know, why not go and try being a creative, or why not try opening a company? She didn't have those opportunities, so she's very excited to see her children doing something that they want to do as opposed to what they need to do. In terms of your personal agency, is vocalizing what the next step is.
So one of the things that I learned that has been incredibly helpful in my career is to ask for help. When I left IBM, I knew I wanted to create my own business, but you know, I knew nothing about the startup world. So luckily I met this woman who was half my age, who had started 5 companies, exited 2, and her first company was founded at 19. And I went to her and I said, can I be your intern? Will you help me? She didn't believe me that I was serious. It was like that movie, The Intern with Robert De Niro, and she always referenced it wherever we went, because I was Robert De Niro. But I learned so much from her in a few short months, and the network that she connected me to really helped me to get, you know, my first startup off the ground. So asking for help and being okay with that. My husband teases me all the time. He says like I have like an army of people helping me every day, including him. But I have a therapist, I have a coach. How many of you here have a coach who helps you? That's great. See, 5 years ago, I would have thought like anything that was self-development, networking, was time away from being productive. And so I never invested in any of that. So today I have a coach and I have a trainer and I have, you know, on every level, physically, mentally, you know, and emotionally, like I have help and support. And I think being okay with getting help has really helped me to be happier and to be more successful.
One
everyone waits. So I think what's great about these panels, we're so different. And for you, what resonates really different. And so, and all of you, if you're here, you're quite a leader yourself. So I would just say, be a role model and share your stories and be seen and be heard and share the challenges. Because I was surprised. I was always like, well, it makes me feel like this. And they're like, what do you mean? And people are just not aware. And so just you're the role models, we're the role models. Remember, we are a very small percentage in America, and we're just increasing now. So we are kind of the generation that's becoming the next generation's role model, and we are climbing our way up. So that's what I can say. I think it will build. We're just in the beginning phases, and but we got to want it. It's not easy. There's no path. So we got to build it.
So, this is the end. I just wanted to say thank you all so much. No, I just wanted to say thank you all for listening with such rapt attention and laughing at all the key moments. You know what? I love panels like these. I mean, and you know, when we were putting this panel together, it's so important to get such a diverse group of women that reflected the diversity of the chief community. You know, here it was also really important to get diversity of experience because we all have very different, you know, backgrounds, very different kind of professional careers and stages. And so, like, I love this because it does make the road, you know, forward a hell of a lot less lonely, right? I will say very personally, through the journey of working with the other chief leads to pull this together, I feel like I found a community that I just did not know existed here. So with that, I just want to say thank you to you all for listening. Thank you to our panelists. If you guys have not stopped by the night market yet, go down and check out Ginger Chi, Emily Heath. Lam will be there with sign. May's going to be there with quality of life. So do meet all of the night market folks. And because, I mean, thank you to Eric and to Joseph who are capturing this event because API Heritage Month is a celebration, not just in May, it's a celebration every day, and this allows us to kind of commemorate this, you know, occasion. And because I'm Filipino and I have to say thanks a lot, we talked about this. I just want to say thank you to Rebecca, to Julian, to Dan, to Rashida, to Michelle, to Kevin, Ryan, Carolina, Maria, Deborah, Taryn, Sujeen, Dustin, Crystal, Marianne, and Mike for helping us pull this together. I hope to God I didn't forget anyone because I always feel awful when that happens. But thank you. Enjoy the rest of the night here.